and I'm an occupational therapy student at Gannon University. Today we're going to be talking about my capstone project, 3D printing and occupational therapy, opportunities for innovation in education and practice. So when we first got started, Dr. Valdez, Dr. Lunsford, and I applied for a research grant. We were awarded that grant, and we were able to purchase the Lulzbot Taz Pro, which retails for about $5,000. With that equipment, we were able to 3D print a carpal metacarpal orthosis and assistive devices, which you can see below. The first one's a grocery bag holder, the second is an adapted key turner, and the third is a bottle opener. So in addition to printing those items, I also created a manual, 3D printing for Gannon University graduate students. It's kind of a beginner guide for those who don't really have a background with this technology. And I was also able to collaborate with an engineering student from the Erie campus, so it was definitely a rewarding experience working together to create these devices. In addition to the 3D printing, I also created a community aging program video series. This is going to be used by local seniors in the Ruskin community. The topics included 5 apps that will make your life easier, staying safe at home, healthy aging and nutrition, and making helpful equipment with items from your home. So to kind of dive into the process of 3D printing, this example is the carpal metacarpal orthosis that we printed. So when you're designing an item, you first start with a sketch in the computer program. Ethan was actually the one who created this sketch, so we kind of worked together to determine the best form for this. Once you have your sketch completed, you can then extrude it to become a 3D model. This is nice because you can kind of get an idea of what the item's going to look like before actually printing it and using the materials. The 3D model is then sent to slicing software. This enables the printer to know how many layers you're going to need, the temperature, things like that. And you can see the final product there. This took about 5 hours to print. The design is far from perfect. It was a good attempt for the first prototype, but it is giving us information for future printing. This slide provides an example of some of the pages from my manual. Topics included things like safety guidelines. I did create a step-by-step guide for designing equipment, the bottle opener in particular, starting from the very beginning. A guide on how to print objects that were already created by others, a glossary of relevant terms. So one of the hardest things about 3D printing is learning the language and the lingo. So I knew including that would be very beneficial. How to troubleshoot when something on the printer breaks, and also information on the different types of software that you're going to be using. So 3D printing is currently already being utilized in the medical field. Things like dental implants, casting, hearing aids, for a variety of things. But for my project specifically, I wanted to hone in on how can we incorporate 3D printing into occupational therapy specifically. And anybody can learn to 3D print, but why is it beneficial for OTs to learn? And it's actually because we're trained in activity and movement analysis, so we have that knowledge to make sure, is that device correct? Is it actually going to help them perform the task that they're trying to do? Is it fitting correctly? Are the biomechanics correct? Also, we do provide a client-centered approach, so actually involving the client in the process of creating these devices can actually improve adherence rates, so that's important as well. So for occupational therapy specifically, some examples that we can use 3D printing for are splints, assistive devices, therapeutic tools, orthotic devices, prosthetics, and educational materials. So why do we need 3D printing? It does have a lot of benefits. There are high levels of customization, low cost of materials. The bottle opener actually prints for less than $2, so it's definitely cost effective. Quick printing times, and it does give us an opportunity for additional research. In the educational setting, 3D printing is important because it gives us a marketing skill for future employment. We can use it to 3D print anatomical models, so kind of give us that hands-on learning experience. And also, it gives us an opportunity to collaborate with students from different disciplines and to work together. And then in practice, you can print orthotic devices and assistive devices right there where you are. You don't have to call and order it, an off-the-shelf product. You have it there, you're making it there, and it's cheaper. You have an opportunity to include the client in that design process, so letting them pick the color, making sure that the fit is where they want it. And then also it has waste-free manufacturing. So the model that I chose for my capstone is the Ecology of Human Performance model. This specifically places a focus on the relationship between the person, context, task, performance, and therapeutic intervention. So I'm going to explain this model a little bit to you. The person in the middle kind of represents a person's experiences, skills, things like that. And the circle around it represents the context, which can be temporal, physical, cultural, a variety of different contexts. So that can influence the person. The T with the circle around it, the small circles, that represents the task. When a person has different life roles, it kind of helps us determine which specific tasks they want to complete, which gives us a performance range. So for an example, someone who has a physical impairment, that can actually cause their performance range to narrow, which is going to affect their ability to be independent in ADLs, IADLs. And that can be influenced by different therapeutic interventions, which you can see around the circle. So like create, prevent, establish, alter, modify, things like that. So for 3D printing specifically, if we see that someone's performance range is narrowing, we can 3D print tools or an orthosis, whatever is needed to improve their performance and then to improve their overall independence. So thinking about occupational performance, 3D printing can really be applied to all of these aspects, activities of daily living. We can print devices that help with getting dressed, with showering, things like that. For instrumental activities of daily living, if someone's having problems with meal prepping or writing, we can 3D print equipment that helps with that. Same goes on for the rest. So really it can be applied to all 6 of these occupations. So for the literature review, you can see my levels of evidence here. If you notice, it's a little heavier in level 4 and 5. I think this is due to the fact that 3D printing in occupational therapy is still a relatively new process. There aren't many systematic or randomized control trials on it yet. It's mostly case studies, expert opinions, things like that. The topics for my critically appraised topics were 3D printing in the educational setting, 3D printing used in practice, the benefits of 3D printing to create orthoses and assistive devices, and aging in place. I had 20 critically appraised topics, and it ranged from 2007 to 2020. So for future considerations, additional research is definitely needed to fully understand how 3D printing can be fully utilized in occupational therapy. A lot of the studies that I read stated a good study would be comparing off-the-shelf products to 3D printing products, and compare, is the quality of life better? Is their independence going up? Things like that. And then having a 3D printer on the Ruskin campus gives students an opportunity to gain those marketable skills that's not offered by all OT programs. So for my experience, it was very challenging. I actually had a different project planned out until COVID-19 came along. Kind of had to make some adjustments and changes, but I was able to come up with a new project that still utilized the 3D printing. Creating the manual was very beneficial. It allowed me to learn the material through and through to be able to create that manual and actually provide resources that will be helpful to other beginners. And last, I really enjoyed the collaboration piece of the project. Working with Ethan was nice. You could tell that we had different focuses. I was focused on how is the fit going to be biomechanically correct. Is the skin integrity going to be saved? Things like that, whereas Ethan was more concerned with the structure, and so it was kind of nice to combine those two to create an item that would be well-rounded and good for the client. So what I learned, I did learn to appraise articles and support practice with valid research. We want to be evidence-based, so learning to identify those good quality articles is important. Also to examine a diagnosis and determine appropriate equipment. So for that one, I was able to learn quite a bit about carpal metacarpal osteoarthritis and come up with a design that would be beneficial to that condition. I did teach myself to use the 3D programming software. Very long, grueling process, but definitely worth it. I learned how to troubleshoot the equipment. That was probably the most frustrating part. I have no background in that machinery, and trying to learn how to unclog filament was definitely a learning curve for me, but now I have that experience. Also, learning how to create a manual that does provide that relevant information for others. And then time management skills, you know, it's a little easier to remain focused when you have a short-term project, but this one was definitely really long. You have to kind of plan week by week where you want to be, so that was a good experience. I was able to communicate with other professionals in the community who have already started the 3D printing in their practice. So it was definitely interesting to kind of collaborate with them, get advice, give advice, and to just have those professional relationships. And last, I definitely learned to be flexible and calm. Sometimes things don't happen exactly the way we want them to, but you still have to keep rolling with it. I do want to give a shout out to Dr. Lunsford and Dr. Valdez. This project would have been impossible without you, so I do appreciate your guidance. To friends and family, thank you for being supportive. It's been a long 3 years, but you never let me stop believing in myself. And then to my cohort, I've definitely enjoyed being a part of this group. I've made some lifelong friends, and I know we're all excited to be one step closer to becoming OTs. And these are my references. Thank you.